All right, welcome to another episode of God Yay or Nay. I'm here with my man Tyrone Morales. Tyrone, thanks for joining me, buddy.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you. It's wonderful to connect with you. It's been a few years. Last time we connected, I think we were playing soccer together. So,
Dude, like years ago.
yeah,
We're both from the same community in High River. That's where we both grew up. So this is kind of fun. Like years later, I found out like me and you are into a lot of the same stuff. A lot of stuff about self transformation, becoming the best self. Self discovery, and like these are things. Yeah, I've just like seen a lot of your stuff online. It's great that you're into that. Why don't you tell my audience how you kind of define what you do right now, and maybe give a little background story of your journey.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, part of my journey, I graduated from university in 2012 with a sport management degree, which is basically just looking at the business side of sports. And graduated, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to help at least a million people to experience health and vitality through whatever means that would be. And it's flowed through a lot of different channels, that goal. So it's shown up as working as like a wellness advocate, working at a health food store, being a personal trainer for a little bit, and then also just exploring the different realms of how we can connect on a soulful level of living a life full of vitality. So there's a lot of different things that I've been exploring lately, but the most recent one has been creating elixir blends, which is like working with herbalism. So kind of
Oh,
modalities that I work with is like breathwork, herbalism, nature immersion, and rites of passage kind of things. So
I love that. Hey, I think I'm pretty good on all of those. Herbalism, I'm a little new on. So like, yeah, what kind of elixirs are you talking about here?
yeah, this particular one that I made this morning, but uh, it has a lot of medicinal mushrooms in it. So it has like lion's mane, chaga, it has reishi, some shilajit, mucuna, cacao. And these are all what I would call, plant allies. So I believe that like all of the plants that we have in nature are there to help us with our health. So a lot of the ones that I use in elixirs is ones that will support my vitality journey. So yeah.
No, I love
No.
that. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because like I remember like hanging out with like shamans and like the Amazon and stuff, and like it's exactly the way they look at like plants. It's like all of these plants, like there's just so much stuff you can get for them, and like every little plant they'll be like, oh yeah, you can use this for that, and it's like it's
Yeah.
cool. Actually, that's pretty impressive that you're actually bringing that into our society and like teaching people how to use that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. Yeah.
Yo, and like the sports thing too. I love that because I was actually reading about like how you went to like Lima to like kind of help people in Lima, Peru,
Yeah.
like to build up like sports and like build community and development around that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I went for my sport management degree, and my first goal was that I wanted to be the GM of the Toronto Raptors. Um,
Okay, good
they,
goal,
they have
good
a sick
goal.
GM right now, though I love Masai.
Ha ha ha
Um,
ha ha.
but I found in my path that, yeah, I wanted to take it towards more of the non-for-profit side. And yeah, that showed up as us going to Lima. We were one of the first classes to go there, and it was a sport for development workshop, teaching how you can use sport as a vehicle for so many things like community development and social integration. So that was my honors thesis, was actually how sport can help newcomers integrate into society. So one of the workshops that we did was, yeah, how play and how sports can help kids develop. So we ended up doing that, and then we actually went to Machu Picchu on that trip, and that like sparked something even deeper for me that I think that was alluding to a little different part of my life. So
No, that's amazing, man. And yeah, like I was saying, like I do love that whole idea of like sports and building community and development and stuff like that, especially with like kids, because like, and I guess like even like how you said Machu Picchu, because a lot of you, a part of you is like immersing yourself in nature and bringing out like your kind of like how you said inner vitality, your inner energies, and letting them kind of flow. And this is how you become more connected with yourself. And no, and then like also on part of it is like a rite of passage. You were talking about rite of passage, and like I don't know, did you ever find like sport as like that kind of thing? Because like I remember coming up in hockey and soccer and football, like sport was like a rite of passage for me, and more of a way it like tested my courage. It made me stand up for myself. It brought like, you know, it brought me to like the edge and like made me push past it, right? Like, do you kind of see it the same way?
Absolutely, yeah. I've always appreciated sport for that aspect. Um, Sport has always taught me so much about myself, and there's so many lessons to be learned about it. And to share that with kids, is a huge part of how they can develop into, someone with integrity, someone with certain values in life, how to learn resilience. And yeah, when it comes to sport, one thing that I learned that really stood out with me was actually balancing my masculine and my feminine energy, actually, which, each and every human has that masculine aspect and that feminine aspect, and we use those for words that are like primordial energies within us.
Mm-hmm.
And the masculine one, sport taught me a lot of that, of like being like hardworking and like really driven and like single-minded focus.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found I was out of balance with that, where I was just looking to compete for the sake of destroying. And I was a little out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started playing sport with a little bit more fun. I started listening to music and making it almost like a dance kind of thing. So, like, learning to integrate those two energies. So, that was like another one that stood out for sports and kind of trickled into areas of my other life. And that's the beauty of sport, is that it always can transform into other aspects of your life. And I think there is a power in sport that also connects people as well. Like, the community building aspect is one of the biggest things, I think, with sport, is how it can connect people beyond perceived limitations. So
Yeah, I fucking love that, dude. Like, you know, and like that really connects with me, and especially like how you were talking about the whole masculine, feminine, like kind of like understanding those energies inside of you. And yeah, and like honestly, like I don't know if you ever read The Way of the Superior Man. It sounds like
yes.
you have.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like it sounds like you're kind of like a lot of those kind of like ways they describe masculinity and femininity are kind of in it. And like honestly, I came from it from the opposite direction, where like I think I was like in touch with my feminine, and like I needed to like really get a little bit of that masculine of like pursuing and like being assertive and being a little bit more dominant and like going after what I want kind of thing. And it is interesting like when you work with those kind of energies inside of you, because when you start like actually expressing those, like if I when I started expressing masculinity in a sense, it started to slowly become more natural and natural. And like now I feel a lot more assertive in my life, and like I go for what I want, I ask for it, and I go and like, you know, I kind of go and do that like don't take no for an answer kind of thing. But like because of that, it like really helps you yeah, it really kind of helps you like understand who you are, get what you want, and do it in a healthy way, like which is
Yeah.
good for you and your community, right?
Huge. Yeah. And
Hmm.
the community aspect, yeah, which as you're speaking, it felt a lot like, I'm sure that you've read it. It's the book by Robert Moore called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
Yeah, yeah, I've read
Yeah.
it like a couple times actually. It's a great book.
It is wonderful. Yeah. I've learned a lot from that. And like, one of the things that was really standing out for me was like to find or to express more wholeness in ourselves. It's like learning which dominant, archetype is playing itself out right now through us, and then learning to balance that out with another. So, you know,
Let me actually give the audience a little bit of a background on this book, just because
yes.
so they understand. So like when they say like archetypes, this is kind of used in psychology and like even in stories and stuff to just kind of like, you know, give a familiarization with the type of like person you're like building up in yourself. So you can have king, warrior, musician, lover, magician, lover. And yeah, these people like are these archetypes inside of you. You can kind of like sometimes you can like express them, and like there's healthy ways to express them and there's very unhealthy ways to express them. So like if you're a warrior, you can like see like what an unhealthy way of expressing warrior would be. It'll be very dominant, destructive, and bad. Or a lover, there's very unhealthy ways too, but there's also very healthy ways. But
Mm,
yeah, just to give the audience before we
yeah,
kind of talk about this, because I do want to talk about this, like
absolutely.
where were you kind of like when you were like kind of seeing your own like archetypes a little bit and like wanting to see which ways to express them healthily?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, thanks for expressing that to your audience there. Yeah, I think like a good way to understand that is, yeah, they're like primordial energies that have been in our psyche for thousands of years. And they are energies that flow through the stories that, live on in our culture. And for, the King Warrior Magician Lover, that's mainly like a book that was made for the male psyche, but there is a book out there for women if they're interested, called Women Who Run with Wolves, that is like the female equivalent
Mhm.
of that book. um and as you were talking about like healthy archetypes, I always think of it as like a triangle, because you have like on the bottom left of the triangle you could have like the full positive expression of an archetype, and then on the right bottom you could have like the negative archetype, and then at the very top is like the integrated version of that. So like
Mhm.
the king that you're talking about, you could have like the high chair tyrant on the full positive, which is like completely tyrannical, and then on the bottom right you would have like the weakling king that just can't, express himself and just won't take responsibility for his kingdom. And then when you integrate those two, that's the full expression. But
Mhm.
in my life, yeah, I found myself very dominant in the warrior archetype, kind of like what we were talking about with sports there before. And what led me into developing more of my lover archetype was actually, smoking a lot of cannabis. That I found that helped me to really slow down and express myself artistically. I started writing poetry. I started immersing myself in nature, and that was kind of the transition that helped me from smoking weed every day to being in nature. Helped me to integrate it in a healthier way, the lover archetype, and just seeing the world with eyes of beauty. And that kind of helped me develop my lover archetype. And
Mhm.
where I'm at now is more of integrating my what you would call the king archetype, which is, being more of service to the community and learning how to integrate all those different archetypes. So
Yeah, and I love that. And that's actually kind of good, like the way you were talking, like we do need actually to put in some work to like integrate these archetypes. This is um
yeah,
like you can go to a psychologist and like they'll be talking in the same way, but in like a completely different language than we're talking right now.
yeah,
And yeah, like right now we're kind of like looking at this in like a kind of a very spiritual lens, and then like maybe in like a depth psychology lens, because I know a lot of like Carl Jung's and like this kind of
yeah,
work and stuff. But yeah, that's cool. I love how you were saying like to get to your to express your lover archetype in a healthy way, you needed to do stuff like immerse yourself in nature. Like you tried some substances, like you were saying marijuana, but like this makes you more empathetic. This makes you more that makes you more like connected with nature. And like yeah, I love that. And that expressed that, and it was like something that could like interact with your warrior archetype a lot more in a healthy way, which when you want to serve the community, now you can do that in a way better way. Because like if you're just that warrior archetype, especially if you're stuck in that dominant role, helping the community, you're just going to be destructive. You might think in your head, I'm doing this in a proper way, but
right.
just because you haven't like integrated lots of parts of your psychology, it's just going to end up being destructive, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it works on the, more unconscious level. I mean, talking about Carl Jung, he says, if you don't recognize your unconscious, all of your subconscious parts of yourself, you'll just keep living your life and you'll call the rest of your life fate. And what happens, you'll just call it fate because you're not actually aware of how you're creating your life. So I think, yeah, like bringing conscious awareness to, those energies in our unconscious, like a term going around is like shadow work, right? Those parts of ourselves that we've hidden from ourselves or pushed under the rug, essentially. So that's definitely, yeah, part of living a more wholesome life and like full of integrity, for sure.
And actually, one thing about the warrior, I think we should talk about too, is like, because I think in our society, especially with like, I don't know, I guess we could say like a lot of like the kind of like politics and stuff that are out there. I think the warrior energy has been the one that's been like kind of like looked at as the worst kind of energy ever, right? Because it's like
Totally.
that dominant male kind of like asshole kind of energy in there. But like the thing is, like, there's like how you said the pyramid, that's one aspect of the warriors on one side, but like the other aspect, that would
Right.
be like if you're not have any kind of integration of your warrior, it's the coward, right?
Yes.
And that's can be equally as destructive, and sometimes it's to yourself but sometimes to your society, because if a society is filled with cowards, like a tyrant can come and take over pretty easily, right?
Very much so. Yeah, I love that. It feels like you're very in tune with not only like the individual expression of those archetypes, but the collective archetype of that. So I definitely appreciate you expressing that.
Yeah, dude. And like I don't know, I always kind of like that I've been really into this in the last couple of years, reading these kind of material and like kind of understanding this and doing the work myself, because the work yourself, it's hard, and it has like a lot to I don't know, it has like a lot of like kind of like inner work and like really trying to like discover like who you are and like really understand that, because
Yeah.
society always tells us who we are, and like a lot of times we take that and just kind of think that this is who we are. But when you like, that's why psychedelics can help a lot, or meditation, or that consciousness, because when you can actually like go in and like actually see what you really are, what really takes you, what
Mm.
really like expresses naturally, like that's where you can do some of that real work, right?
Amen. That
Ha,
was
ha,
juicy, man.
ha,
Preach.
ha, ha. Actually, one of your videos I was watching, that I loved, and I got it from it. It was the CAN acronym, like you
Oh,
can do
nice.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, because I think this is such a good exercise for people to do, to like I was saying, like really understand yourself.
Right.
Can you maybe go into that acronym a little bit with my audience, because I would love
Yeah.
for some people to try this. It's really good exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. And if they want, they can connect with me after and I can send them a little worksheet on it too. But the CAN acronym came from an idea that came to me when I was just in nature. And it was the idea of being a vitality visionary. And I was really in the place of my life where I wanted to create a life full of vitality. I saw myself living in a way that was thriving, not just surviving. And I was like, okay, well, how am I going to get there? How am I going to bring this to fruition? How am I going to bring this vision to fruition? And it came to me that, I thought, instead of saying, I can't do this, it was I can do this, and anybody can do this. And from that, I got the acronym CAN, which stands for uh, the C part is connected, and the A part is alive, and the N part is nourished. So we go through each one of those and ask ourselves, when have we been the least connected? And then when have we been the most connected? And then make a list of that. When you're the least connected, when you're the most connected. Same thing, you go when you're the least alive and the most alive, and then the least nourished and the most nourished. And those words can mean whatever they need for you. Connected could be like connected to community, connected to yourself, a sensation of having a tribe that supports you. Alive could be, feelings of exhilaration, being in nature when you're like, wow, I'm just so damn alive. I
Hmm.
feel everything. And then the nourished aspects could also just be, drinking an elixir or just giving yourself a nice little hug. So anything, whatever it is. But what I like to do through those exercises is once you've got your list of least connected and then most connected, you want to create something that will hold it's almost like a container for the contents of your psyche and the stories that you've been telling yourself. So I usually like to draw. I either like to draw an image of what symbolizes when I was the least connected and then the most connected,
Hmm.
or do like a poem with that as well. So, and you can do that through all of those. But I usually like to pick like one word from when I was the most connected, one word from when I was the most alive, and one word from when I was the most nourished, and then create something new from those words because they act as like nutrients for that new vision that you want to create. So, you got your compost and then you got your seeds. So the
I
least
love that.
connected. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, that definitely helped me in my life to discover, who I needed to become to create that. So
Yeah, and the one thing I love about that, and like, because I've done similar kind of exercises, and like how valuable these are, is like when you were saying like connected, alive, nourished. Like a lot of us, when you say that, like, hey, can you pick something that you felt so connected or you felt so alive? Like a lot of us can think about that almost immediately and be like, yeah, like I would be like, oh, I like when I'm on stage, I feel so connected. Like right away, I can think of that immediately. But when you actually go and like actually write about that and go and like actually explore that, and then like how you were saying, like try to like find different values that you felt or like that were part of being in that connectiveness, that's when you can actually like learn a lot deeper about why that makes you feel connected.
yeah.
And you can like actually, like you said, create a vision of the future from it. So like that's where that inner work of actually writing it down and exploring it can be
Mm,
so goddamn beneficial.
oh,
Let's go and do this with you a little bit. So why don't you tell our audience a time where you felt like really, really connected?
absolutely. Yeah, one of the times when I felt most connected was in it was actually when it's a story about when I felt the least connected. I was going through a time in my life when I was experiencing, what they clinically call, depersonalization. To me, it was an initiation, but I just felt like everything around me was completely bleak. Like I wasn't really connected to the world around me. I just felt completely isolated. Even when I was like right in front of someone, I didn't feel anything. And I remember driving in Mexico one time, and I was on the back of this little golf cart. We were driving on this island called Isla Mujeres. And, I had been praying for days, just to feel a sense of aliveness. I had felt so disconnected. And there's a small moment where I just looked up into the sky, and it was almost like there's this opening in the sky. It was like someone from behind the sky just like ripped it open and was like, just shoved all the light into me. And, you know, it wasn't like I was doing anything significant. I think it was holding an energy of awe and reverence is what it was. And, it really ignited a deeper part in myself that was searching for that connection that I might have been disconnected from in my life. So, you know, it's not your everyday example of connectedness, but it was a moment that really stood out for me because it was contrasted by when I was the least connected. But there's other times like, being in nature. I would say recently jumping into some cold water.
Ha, ha,
It was like minus 30 here in High River, and I went to the river, and yeah, that sense of aliveness is and connection is just wow. It's
yeah.
life changing.
And I love that because like even like you just telling that story, I love how you because like you kind of look at that values of what you were just talking about, and you did say like awe and like something greater, and like you can tell now that like just from exploring that, you can tell that like this is something that's really like valuable to me, is to feel that. And
Yeah.
that's where your vision can come in now, where you're like, now I want to create a vision that allows me to feel that more.
Yes.
because like, and like everyone's different. Everyone has something that's like, some people might be like, oh yeah, I love being in nature and seeing the awe, but that's not what really gets me. Like for me, I would say like feeling connected is like when I'm on stage and like I feel like completely present with an audience, and it just feels like we're just on the same page. And
Right.
like when that's happening, that's where I'm feeling connected. And then that's when I'm feeling like just completely free, joyful. And and this is like, that's why like when I like think about this exercise, I look at that and I go like, okay, I want to create more of uh
Mm,
these moments, and like that's where my vision comes in. So like
love that.
I know, and that's why I love this exercise, because it really does it does like allow you, and I don't know, it can also like when you're talking about why you were feeling disconnected, did you ever go into that? Did you ever kind of like look at that, like why was I disconnected?
Mm,
What was I doing during that time that wasn't allowing me to feel any connection?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I found well, first of all, that was an amazing share from you, what you just shared there with like feeling connected on stage. Cause I think, yeah, when you're aware of those things, I was watching one of your videos there, and you were talking about how you were doing breath work on the way to one of your shows there.
Hmm.
And I think that when we get that vitality vision, then the things that will bring us that vision come into our life naturally, like the breath work will feel magnetically drawn to those things. So when we do have that vision, those things will come naturally. It won't have to be like, oh, I need to figure this out kind of thing. It's like it's there. It'll come to you.
Hmm.
um but with the disconnected part, yeah, I think there was the missing aspect for me was like the language that I had around my feelings and making sense of my experience. Even with the depersonalization, like that kind of language, it kept me more disconnected because I was in agreement with a diagnosis. And I was listening to your podcast there the other day with the Ayurveda boys there. And I just love the different perspective of like Western and like, different things out there. So the disconnected part, yeah, for me, I discovered it was more of an initiation for me. So I obviously at the time, I was eating shitty foods. I wasn't really exercising as much as I wanted to. I didn't have the meaningful connections in my life. So there was a lot of aspects, and I think also not really being on purpose and living in a world, I think, that I felt like I wasn't really part of.
Hmm.
So the um, one documentary that talks about this really good is called Crazy Wise. And it talks about like the different diagnosis that people get in our system, and how it's really actually like shamanic. It's a shamanic calling, a lot of these things, if people are hearing voices, or they're going through a really dark time, instead of that being depression, or psychosis. What it really is a deeper shamanic initiation. So I started getting into things like mythology, and not just like the Greek mythology, but like there's Norse mythology, and there's all of these different tales, even indigenous mythology. And some of the stories talked about a journey into the underground. And so for me, in my disconnected stage, what I found was that I was in the underground on a psychic level, and I was actually learning how to navigate that. So the disconnected part, yeah, I mean, I could talk about it from like a scientific perspective and like Western, but for me, the mythological aspect really stands out because it's just so much more empowering to me to be like, oh, I was in the underground. I was learning to speak a new language. It's not like I was down in the dumps kind of thing. It was like,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know. So that was a bit conjobulated message, but
No, I love that. No, yeah, that's true. Like, I agree completely. Like, honestly, sometimes using that mythology and the archetype kind of like thing, I like it a little bit more, just because yeah, it resonates with you. It hits something deeper, like it really does. And like, um, I've read books on like clinical psychology and stuff too, and like they'll like look at this more and like, they'll look at traits like character traits, and like when we're talking about our different archetypes, they'll just say character traits like this is assertiveness or this is
Right.
agreeableness, right? And you're
Right.
just like, okay, those are traits, like I get it. And like, you can learn a ton from that. And like, when you're going to school to become a psychologist, that's what you probably want to do, right? But
Right.
like, for guys like us, I think, who aren't really interested in that, but we're more interested in like actually becoming better ourselves and like actually becoming like a little bit more in our healthier version. I love the archetype version just a little bit better. And I
Absolutely.
have heard that whole idea of like, um a lot of our mental illness, like shamans, like they look at that, like that's how they look at it. Like they're just like, when you have these kind of illnesses, like sometimes depression or even anxiety, they can be looked at, these are callings, they're meant to
Yeah,
say something to you, and you're not meant to run away from it.
absolutely.
Yeah, and like I remember you were talking about in one of your videos about like the pain of the artist. I can't remember what book you were talking about, but like, like an artist always has to, like an artist always goes through pain, any kind of artist. Like,
Yes.
and the thing that makes a good artist is to be able to embrace that pain, because like we all have pain and shit, and most of us, and I bet you when you were saying you were eating shitty food when you're really disconnected, like I've been down that road too. We all have. Like
Yeah.
we're numbing our pain. We know how to numb it. We live in the world with our phones and shit now, which numbing it might be the easiest thing to freaking do. And like a lot
Easily.
of us get stuck in these lifestyles, but like when we start looking at our anxieties, our depressions, our worries, and like a lot of these stuff is kind of like signals and more of like that something needs to be paid attention to.
Mm.
And when we able to get into that whole idea of like, okay, like for me it was anxiety, and it's like, okay, like I'm anxious, like be able to feel this anxiety and
Yeah.
kind of like see where that pain takes you, and like
Right.
that's where you actually work through the pain, and that's when you actually come out of it with some like a little bit of wisdom, which like if you're
Yeah.
an artist, that little bit of wisdom can be used to create something just beautiful that will help other people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's like in mythological terms, I always call that bringing back the gold essentially. Because in mythology, like one of the things is there's that road of initiation, and when we go on that journey, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of like the hero's journey. It's like, when you have that call to adventure, and then you cross the threshold, and then you defeat whatever it is that you were fighting against, and then you come back to the community, and then you bring back that gold. So you know I do honor you for going on that journey, especially with the anxiety thing. I had a little bit of social anxiety myself for like a long time, and had to find ways to really embrace that and make that the goal in life. So um, there's a story in mythology about going to the underground, and there was a boy once who, he got pulled into the underground, and there was a old man there who was like, all right, you're gonna have to slave away here for until all this work is done. So the boy was just pounding away. He's down in this deep dark cave, and he's just hacking away at the walls, and he's getting all this coal, and he's like, how long do I have to do this for? And eventually he got this bag full, and the guy there was like, all right, you can go up. And so he has this bag of coals, and he goes up, comes from underneath the cave there, and he's like, all right, I gotta find a place to stay. So he goes to this hotel, and the manager is like, sorry, we don't have any rooms, because the boy's looking a little shaggy. He's just worked for 1,000 years
Yeah.
down in the underground. And he pulls up this bag of coals, and all of a sudden the manager's like, you know what, we do have a room for you. And so the boy's like, okay, that's great, that's wonderful. So he goes to bed at night, puts the bag of coals beside of his bed, and when he wakes up, the whole entire bag is gone. And so he goes back to the manager and says, my bag's missing, is what happened. And he's like, oh, I'm not sure. And so the boy needs this bag of coals to continue his journey. So what it really was that the bag of gold, the bag of coals was actually gold, because what happens in the underground transforms when it comes up into the real world. So all like of his hard labor in the underworld was actually gold. So the manager saw the bag of gold and was like, yo, I'm going to take all that. But the boy was naive, right? So he ended up later in the story, he goes back down into the underworld, gets the bag of gold, does the work again, and then comes back up, and he comes to the hotel manager and is like, listen, you're going to give me back my old bag of gold. You're going to give me a haircut. You're going to clean me up. And I want the rest of my nights here for free. And he learns to be more assertive and, to honor his gold, because he's not naive to the work that he did in the underground, and he sees, the gold that's in it now. So that's like a story that just like bubbled up for me when you were talking about being, more assertive and talking about the gold there. So that was kind of a condensed version of it. It's a much longer story.
But beautiful like story. I love that. Honestly, that's why like these stories could be so powerful. Like I just like it is like it's such a cool thing to like hear it like that, because it really is true. And like the other thing about the world, like people will take advantage of you. Like it's kind of weird. We live in a world where sometimes people just like kind of act like, no, everybody has to be nice, everybody has to be all right. And it's just like, yeah, I get it. We would love that. It's just like, it's not realistic. We live in a world where people will take advantage of you, and it can be anybody. So like you do have to kind of like, there has to be this kind of like self-confidence and assurance in yourself where you can like actually stick up for yourself. So
Absolutely.
no, I love that story, dude.
Absolutely. And I mean, tying back what you were talking about before with that aspect of like the artist and pain. I think that a lot of these stories and what we live through. I mean, I've seen you do the cold showers as well. That's an experience, a little bit of pain there too. So, and I love your video with the cold shower with the screaming. It's hilarious. If anybody's listening, they got to go watch that. So, but yeah, when it comes to these things in our life, those callings, I always call them initiations. And in mythology, they have what's called the Threefold Awakening. So the first part in any initiation is the aspect of separation. So there's, separating from who we think we are, separating from the ideas that we've had in our mind about who people have told us who we are. And, we separate from the everyday life. So you could see that playing out in a lot of different stories. And then the second part is the threshold, which is, that aspect where we get called into, that's where like the real transformation happens, something that makes us uncomfortable. There's some kind of alchemical transformation. And then there's the third part, which is the return, which is when we come back to the community and we learn to bring back what we had just learned or transformed through. And for me, the one thing that really helped me navigate those initiations in life where there was some kind of aspect of pain was jumping into the cold rivers and, doing the cold showers, because you're learning that whole entire process. And through that, it's a negotiation with pain, because in any time in life, we have like buzzwords around like, transform yourself, you can change and stuff. It's like, of course, but there's this real transformation requires some kind of negotiation with some kind of pain or suffering. So there's always that negotiating aspect. And for me, the cold water, jumping into really cold rivers, those kind of things helps me to learn how to navigate that in life. So
Hell yeah. And that's amazing. And like you were saying, like with our world of just like comfort, because like we do live in such a different world than like even 50 years ago. It's like insane. And like we're really comfortable, and like that's amazing. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But like there is like a lot of people just think now just like we should just be in comfort all the time, and like doing anything of
Mm,
discomfort is just like I've seen a lot of people who just think like that's just a stupid idea. Why would you make yourself like uncomfortable like in any reason? And like sometimes people take it to the extreme where they don't even want to work out or anything, which is
right.
just kind of like yeah, and it's just like you have to understand like you're hurting yourself even more sometimes taking like jumping into a discomfort voluntarily, which you're doing when you're jumping into a cold river. Like
Mm,
that is very uncomfortable, especially the first
yeah.
time you do it. But like you said, you negotiate with the pain, you learn to be there with it, you learn to accept it and like overcome it pretty much. And like even
Yeah.
like I've only done it once where I've jumped in glacier water. I fucking hated it. But I do
Yeah.
cold showers all the time now. And for the most part, like I would say like now 80 to 90% of the cold showers I take, like I'm like pretty fine with it. It doesn't bother me anymore. And
Yeah.
like it has its health benefits for sure, but it also has that like it really did teach me like to like really like kind of be with like uncomfortable feelings a lot
Mm,
and be able to settle in it. And like the one thing I loved about like cold showers, and I bet you when you're in a glacier water, it's even this times 10, but like when it hits you, your body reacts right away, and it's like it tells you like, okay, get the fuck out of here. And like that's basically your body when it's doing it. But like over time you can train your body just to be like, all right, calm down, calm
mm,
down. And like when you do that, like you can take that to any part of your life, because you'll notice how your body would like react to so many
mm.
situations, like and like when you get lost in just those reactions, that's where you make mistakes, that's where you do stupid shit, or that's where yeah, and like it's just you're doing that unconsciously. But when you're allowed to like learn to like calm yourself down, you're able to bring that consciousness or your presence back and be able to like deal with situations a lot better. So like I do love how you're like yeah, like you're doing this like kind of work, especially with cold water, and like I guess you do it with breath work as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I watched your recent episode there, talking about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, nervous system. And I do find that to be a lot more true. One of the things that like really helps with that for me was like a poem by Rumi that says, we have two different teachers in life. There's the voice when it's cold outside, and you hear the grandma say, it's really cold out, like you should put a jacket on. And Rumi says, run when you hear that voice. Spiritual clarity is much more like prominent when we have like the stern slaps of a father, which is like that like toughness and like that willingness to experience that uncomfortability. So yeah, with sorry, what was your question again? That was a bit of a sidetrack.
Yeah, it wasn't really a question,
Yeah.
but like no, I was just kind of like saying like how like this like just putting yourself in this like discomfort, how like it really helps you, like, and it just makes you like it makes you resilient, it makes your life easier like in the long run. And I just like it is nice like how you teach people that. And yeah, and like how long have you been doing the breath work now for?
Right, the breath work. Yeah, the breath work I've been doing for about I would say about like 5 years now. I've been doing it for, and doing different experiences with like pranayama, like ujjayi and bastrika, and then the Wim Hof breathing.
Hmm.
And his brother has a course as well too called the dopamine activation course. But like I first got into breath work when I was going through a bit of a tough time, dealing with like a lot of changes in my family. And one of the things that like really helped me to release a lot of like the emotions that were flowing in my body and that I just wasn't acknowledging, was breath work. I did like this holotropic breath for about like an hour. And after
Yeah.
that, I cried for like half an hour. I was just complete release.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and since then I was like, wow, there's some kind of power here, and I need to explore this, because wow, my life is transformed from that.
I
So
love it. And like you were saying, like when you get those emotions that are just like rolling through your body, especially when something shitty happens, like, you know, like everyone's gonna deal with grief one day in their life, and like it's just a sad part of nature, right? But like it's a part of nature that you just have to accept. And like even like my dad had like a major stroke back during Christmas, and like for like a couple months there, it was really, really fucking depressing. Like now everything's like starting to like see the light and stuff, but like yeah, having those emotions go through you, it was like I could feel them like just in my body, and I wasn't processing them properly. But once in a while, like I would just break down, and like that really helped release it, and then I could like return to like more of like my like stable self, and like being more like of that like kind of like strong person that I usually am. But like you have to sometimes break down, and it's fine. It's like those emotions are stuck in your body, release them, and it's a natural way to fucking do it, right?
oh, 100%. And like whatever emotions you need to express, like, I mean, yeah, I always tell people that, because I have been doing like breath work, like teachings here recently, been doing like some ceremonies with cacao actually. Because cacao for me has been like a very like heart opening
And what's
medicine.
can you say cacao? What
Cacao.
is, yeah, what is
Um,
cacao?
Cacao, yeah, it's the OG of where like all chocolate comes from. Um,
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's like, is it basically cocoa, but like that's just
yeah,
how you actually say it, cacao?
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
For a lot of like people, if you ever see in grocery stores, cocoa or cocoa, it'll have a different spelling. So like the cacao is Cacao, not OA at the end, because the OA is when they go through a dutching process. So you have the cacao beans, right? That are harvested from the cacao plant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when you see the powder, that's like when all the beans are ground up and then siphoned through. But what'll happen is that sometimes they do a dutching process, which they'll add like an alkalizing agent, so that it doesn't have like a bitter taste. But the cacao is like it in its raw form, and the plant itself has been used as like currency. Even back in like the Mayan days, they would trade cacao beans instead of money, actually. But the plant itself, yeah, is a very yeah, I'm drinking some right now. I mean, it's if anybody's interested, just send me a message to learn more about it. But yeah, cacao is basically chocolate.
Oh, okay, nice. And all
Yeah.
right, cool. The more I got to learn more about these elixirs.
Absolutely.
All right, Tyrone, this was fucking awesome, dude. Yeah, I got one more question of the podcast. It's the name of the game. So, Tyrone,
Yes.
God, yay or nay?
God, yay. All the way.
Well, let me ask you, when you were going through your disconnected phase, what do you think your ideas of like any kind of spirituality or anything were during that time?
Yeah, that was a true test of my faith, I think. And yeah, learning to develop, um, yeah, I would say like a deeper presence. And I think it brought up me making more room for more of that spirituality in my life. Because I mean, without going through those times, I mean, I remember even a time where there was like a week and I wasn't eating any food there, and I had $2 and I went and got the best burger at A&W. It was the best burger of my life. I was just living off of water. But each one of those experiences really taught me how to lean into to trust in that higher power, and that we're all co-creators with life. And for me, it was like learning, I have my part of the co-creation, and then there's also, that greater force that we co-create with. And for me, it was learning to trust that instead of just being like, okay, it's all on me, it's all on me. And I learned how to open up space in my life for, you know, that kind of co-creation with that higher power. So, and to trust in it. And from that, that's where, you know, life will bring you to places that you couldn't even imagine. So
Hell yeah, dude. And no, I love that whole like trust in it, like as well. Like that that's like it's definitely easier said than done, but I remember like that is something I needed to really learn to do, is like trust, and like working with like ayahuasca a lot, that was a big one too. Like like that taught me like to trust the medicine, and then like how you said, like trust like whatever that higher thing is, like it is definitely helps with just opening up your whole life. All right, Tyrone, dude, like this was amazing. Let my audience know where they can get a hold of you, anything you want to promote or anything. You just, yeah, this is the time to do it.
beautiful. Yeah, they can connect with me on Instagram. It's triple T Tyrone dot Morales at that's my Instagram there. And
I'll
then
toss it in the bio.
okay, perfect. And then yeah, just my website, tyronemorales.com. And for the most relevant things here recently, I do teach like elixir classes, like one-on-one if people are interested. And I have an elixir pop-up here in Calgary on June 15th. So if people are on my Instagram, I'll have all the details there. So
All right, six. And what are you doing at the pop-up?
yeah, well, one of my business partners and I were creating some elixir blends. So if people don't know how to craft elixirs, then we'll have pre-made blends for them with all the superfoods that I was talking about, and ones that can support a lot of the things that we were talking about, whether it's like breath work or learning how to, you know, counter stress in your life, because we all have stress. So the elixirs have what's called adaptogens, and that works as like a cruise control for your body. So if you have really low energy, it'll bring your energy back up. If you're overstimulated, anxious, it'll level you out. So we have a lot of that stuff. So all the
I
plant
love it.
allies there.
Hell yeah. All right, dude. I'm gonna pop by on the 15th if I'm in Calgary. That's awesome, man. Yo, thank you so much, dude. This was amazing.
Oh, thank you, man. It's wonderful connecting with you. And yeah, blessings with everything that's happening there with you, man. Yeah, prayers for your pops there. And would love to connect with you soon here again. So
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, let me